The following program is wholly sponsored and produced by Real Estate Radio Philadelphia, LLC, which is responsible for its content.
Good morning, Philadelphia, Montgomery County, Bucks County, Delaware County, Chester County. This is Real Estate Radio, and I'm your host, Doug Andraka, here on 1180 WFYL. If you've been listening to the show, you know I am a lender here in the King of Prussia area, and we have created this show to talk to you about your local real estate market, because real estate is a local phenomenon. And in studio today with us, we have a partner on our show, Carl Scaramuzza from Credit Blueprint. Carl, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Doug.
Good to have you. We are going to be touching on credit and getting deeply into how credit is important, not only for your real estate life, but for all of your life, because it involves so many facets now of your life, your job, your insurance possibly. So we'll talk about some of those things and what you can do to improve yourself. Even those of you that have good credit out there, you can make your credit better, and that really affects you real estate-wise these days, because unfortunately, they reduce us to a number these days, and that's your credit score. Maybe later we can get into what is a credit score and what goes into that. But even if you have good credit and can easily get a mortgage, for example, if you have better credit, you might be able to get a little bit lower interest rate. So we'll talk about that. But I want to talk about first and touch on what I think is one of the reasons why I like to do this show is the misinformation that you get in the mainstream media and the confusion that it creates. And we certainly want to give you the information behind the headlines and behind the confusion that exists out there. And as an example, I want to show or go over with you two articles that I saw come out. One was in the Philadelphia Daily News, and the headline of the article says, "Sales of Previously Owned Homes Fall." So most people, you know, they basically read headlines. They might read a couple sentences of the article. So sales of previously owned homes fall. So you read that and you think, great, more bad real estate news. Sales of homes are falling. Well, in the exact same day, using the exact same information that article used, I have a online website, a real estate website called MBS Authority, and their headline is, "Pending home sales up 13%. So we have two people using the same information. One says pending home sales up 13%, exclamation point. The other one says sales of previously owned homes fall. So if you read the whole article, you might be able to pull apart why that is. But really what happened is they're comparing, one article is comparing statistics from September of this year versus September of last year, showing that pending home sales are up 13%. The other one is comparing sales from September of this year to August of this year. So in general, this year, slowly, incrementally, as we head into the winter, which is traditionally what happens, home sales fall a little bit until we head into the spring market, which generally starts around February. So that's a normal occurrence. But what they're ignoring is we are better off in real estate than where we were a year ago, especially as far as these pending sales, and that's contracts that are signed for homes that have yet to sell. Now, that doesn't mean they're going to close, because there are some issues that could happen during the process. Maybe a property doesn't appraise, maybe a home inspection kicks the property out, the buyer gets scared based on the work that needs to be done on the property. But there's two articles, same time frame, using the same information. One screams, real estate is bad, you know, sales are falling. The other one says real estate is good, pending home sales are up. So we are here to kind of bring light to that situation for you and hopefully give you information that will allow you to make a good real estate decision if you are thinking of purchasing a home. And we were talking a little bit before the show. Carl, you've been in the real estate business in general in different facets for how long?
14 years.
14 years. I've been in 21 years, and we certainly have seen different markets. What is your feel in general for the market today?
There was a recent poll that says 1 in 3 renters right now think it's a good time to buy in the next 2 years. So I think if I read that poll and it told me 6 to 12 months, I might see some positive in that. But I mean, what that's telling me right now is there's just no sense of urgency. Consumer confidence is low. Too much inventory out there right now. Too many houses on the market. So while we've had some improvement over the last 12 months, jobs are greater. That helps, right? I think there's 1.3 million more jobs from a year ago. Rents increased 2% over the last 12 months. So anytime rent increases, that certainly helps the housing market. And we've talked about this before. 5-6 years ago, when housing prices were through the roof, maybe it made more sense to rent back then. But right now is a great opportunity, versus a homeowner versus renting right now. You could actually have a lower payment on your mortgage than you could as a renter.
And I'll give you an example on that. We had a settlement this week, and for those of you maybe who haven't listened to the show, I'm a mortgage lender here in the King of Prussia area, and we do transactions each and every month. And one that we had just last week, a person that was renting, and he was renting for $1,000 per month, and we did the home purchase. So he purchased a home, so he now owns the home. He purchased it under market. It was a property the realtor thought would sell for about $125,000. Now, it was a bank sale, so the bank is the seller. He ended up getting the property for $75,000, and his total payment, including mortgage, taxes, and insurance, is going to be $750. So $250 less than what he was paying in rent. So those are some of the bargains that exist out there, and actually first-time home buyers are the most active participants in the market right now. They're representing about 32 or 33% of all home purchases are first-time home buyers. Now, usually that stimulates the housing market because who is a first-time home buyer is buying from who? Someone else who used to be a first-time home buyer and bought a starter home and wants to trade up. The problem today is first-time home buyers are buying from the seller as many times a bank, or it's a foreclosed property or a short sale, and it's not somebody that's trading up, it's somebody that's already out of the house and has to rent somewhere because they can no longer qualify for a mortgage. So we're not getting that trade-up bump that we used to get in past markets. But if you are a first-time home buyer especially, or somebody maybe that previously was a homeowner and is currently renting, there is a couple factors that you need to consider. One, Carl, you mentioned the important one, is that in many cases you can buy and have a mortgage payment less than what you're paying in rent. But you have to look at what the combination of factors that exist for you right now. And really, there's a couple things. You have historically low interest rates, which helps make your monthly payment extremely low as it can be. And number two, with the fall of home prices, you have home prices cheaper than they've been in a long time, which makes the affordability of the house better than it's been in my entire real estate career. There's an affordability index, and it's at its low right now versus where it's ever been. So housing, if you are in a stable job, housing is a great investment. And it also, just think about the psychological part of it. Being able to be in a home that you own, that you're going to be able to participate in, control by making it the way you want it to be, and participate in the inflation of that home down the road as a long-term investment. We'll talk a little bit about that later.
One of the other things that I've learned from listening to the show as well is the first-time home buyer, I believe you said, is 3 years, right?
3 years.
3 years. First-time home buyer, if you haven't purchased a house in the last 3 years, you can be considered to be a first-time home buyer again, right?
Correct. And that's important because if you're going to use some of the governmental programs that exist for first-time home buyers, like, for example, Montgomery County has a program or several programs where you can get money from the county if you're a first-time home buyer for closing costs, for example, or in some cases even money for a down payment. Now, you have to fit their criteria. You can't make more than a certain amount in income, and you can't have more than a certain amount of money in the bank. But if you fit those criteria and you're buying in Montgomery County, then there are certainly some programs that you can tap into. But again, their definition of first-time home buyer is you can't have owned a home in the last 3 years. So some people think, well, great, 4 years ago I owned a home, but I had to let it go because I couldn't afford it. I'm no longer a first-time home buyer. Well, in their eyes, you are. So the state has some programs available as well, and different municipalities, depending on where you live, can help you with down payment and or closing costs. One of the big ones that helps with closing costs these days also is the seller. The seller will help pay for your closing costs, and in many loans that we do, like VA loans or USDA loans, the seller can practically pay for all of your closing costs. So
wow, that's amazing. I mean, that's I mean, there's some products out there that that people just don't even know about. We just did the a first-time homebuyer seminar, and I got a lot of education through that. Just sitting there talking to you about some of the different products that were out there that are really exciting right now for some areas.
There's a lot of things, depending on the area that you're in, that are really useful. For example, in the city of Philadelphia, with frankly, when people can't make their mortgage payment, they're not taking care of the house. The house falls into disrepair. Eventually, if it gets foreclosed on, or even if they sell it because they can no longer afford the mortgage payment, or they do a short sale where the bank gets involved, usually the house is not in that great a shape. So what we're using a lot, first-time home buyers in the city, is a program called a 203K loan. It's an FHA program where someone can purchase the property and at the same time also, as part of the mortgage, borrow the money they need to fix it up. So one of the advantages of why people in the past used to like to buy new construction, not only did they get a new home, but they got to pick out everything in the home. They got to pick the flooring they wanted. They could pick the kitchen the way they wanted. They could paint it the way they wanted, and make it the way they wanted to upon move-in. Well, you can kind of do the same thing with a 203K loan where, say the property needs a new kitchen. Well, who's picking out the countertops and who's picking out the cabinets? You are. And you can make that house like you want it, and maybe even get all these repairs done prior to you moving in, and move into almost a brand new home at that point, but you're not paying those new construction prices. I read an article, D.R. Horton, who's one of the national builders, and Pulte, they're having a hard time because between the cost of the land and what they have to pay to build a house, they're having a hard time making money because they can't sell the house for enough to cover their costs because of all the competition from people buying existing homes, which are deeply, deeply discounted. So new home builders are having a tough time right now because if you're going to buy right now, the bargains are in existing homes. And don't be scared by maybe a home that needs some repairs. And also don't be scared if you think your credit maybe is not as good as it needs to be to purchase a home, because in my mind, time is your friend and credit should not be an obstacle. I don't care where you're starting from. You can build your credit such that you can get in shape to purchase a home. And Carl, maybe in general, maybe you could talk about what you do and how you get people along that path.
Well, I'll give you an example of a family that I worked with about 12 months ago. It was a gentleman that went through a divorce about 5 years ago and lost everything. Lost his house, had a second home that he ended up foreclosing on, had some outstanding debts, had was between $30,000 and $40,000 in credit card debt that with the divorce actually had to let that fall behind because he couldn't keep up on the payments. So this was a gentleman that when he came to me was very embarrassed about his credit situation. His whole life, he's always had good credit. And this was an embarrassing situation that happened to him, embarrassing circumstance that led his credit to the track that it's on. So he came to me, we did the consultation, and what I say to all my clients all the time is time heals all wounds. So the older some of those accounts are, the easier it is to kind of get them removed off of a report. Okay, but we were able to get a lot of the negative items off the report, and the foreclosure had kind of seasoned up for about 4 years, and I ended up taking this borrower from a 520 up to a 620, and he's now a homeowner. So, and this was a gentleman that had a couple teenage daughters as well. So he was forced to, once he lost the house through the divorce, was forced to rent right away. So he was just looking for some stability and didn't want to be a renter, and said, it was his commitment to make a change and call me and really commit to fixing the credit is what got them back on track.
And two things important there. When you said 520 to 620, you're talking someone's credit score. Everything involved in real estate these days, if you're borrowing money, they're going to look at a credit score. Maybe you could explain, get real basic and explain what a credit score is and what goes into that.
Well, typically right now, mortgage lenders, you would know this best, Doug, are looking for a 620 credit score. And that's really changed over the years with, over the past 5 years here. Everything's really, there's been an overcorrection in the mortgage market, and everything's really tightened up when it comes to actually being able to purchase a house or refinance your existing home. Everything's tightened up. But, as far as, credit scores right now, anything below a 620 credit score is considered unusable. There's really not much you can do with it. There's no lenders out there really right now that would lend you, do a first or a second mortgage for you. Could you get an automobile with under a 620 credit score? Probably, sure. But you're probably going to see some higher interest rates. You're probably going to see a 20% interest rate, and they might want to see some money down. So it's really what I would call just a dead credit score. It can't help you at all. So I've worked with a lot of clients with 480s, 480 credit scores and 520s, and to move scores up 50 to 100 points to that magic number of 620, it's definitely doable. I've worked with multiple families, lots of families that we've moved the scores up 100 points.
But what is a score? Where does that come from? What is involved in a credit score?
Well, the three credit agencies, Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion. Boy, if I had the algorithm to how they actually figured out the credit score, I think I'd be a pretty rich man. So I can tell you percentages that actually go into what makes up a score, and we touched on this before, which is 35% of your actual credit score is based on making your payments on time. That's obvious, right? You make your payments on time, you think you should have good credit. Mm-hmm. Well, 30% is actually based on the amount that you owe. Okay? So you can make your payments on time, but if you're overextended, and when I say amounts owed, that could be a credit card, that could be a new automobile. Couple examples, new automobiles like that. When you first get an automobile, let's say it's a $20,000 car that you purchase, okay? When that hits your credit, regardless of how much money you've put down on that automobile, Experian, Equifax, and TransUnion, they don't know how much money you put down. They don't know what your down payment was. So it could be a $20,000 car that you brought $5,000 to the dealership, but it doesn't know what your loan to value is on your car. So that actually is going to have a negative impact for a couple months on your credit scores when you first purchase a vehicle, or same thing happens when you refinance a home.
And it's a shame that we're all reduced to numbers these days, but everybody, you are going to, when you apply for a mortgage, for example, you are going to be reduced to a credit score number, and that score is going to do one of two things for you. First of all, it's going to determine whether you can even get the loan or not. That's one of the main factors. But secondly, it's going to determine what interest rate you pay. So we're going to take a break here shortly, but when we come back, we're going to talk about what you can do to get a better interest rate when you're purchasing home and also when you're refinancing. We're going to talk about where interest rates are going so you can kind of plan your real estate life. And we're going to talk to Carl more about things you can do to improve your credit, which is only going to help you down the line in various aspects of your life. So hang with us here on Real Estate Radio. Come back in a minute, and we'll talk more local real estate.
How quick are you gonna get up?
Phone lines are open now at News Talk 1180. Call us at 610-539-TALK. That's 610-539-8255.
8. We've worked together for years.
7. I'm the parking attendant. I park your car every day.
1 in 8 Americans is struggling with hunger.
6. We speak at PTA meetings all the time,
including millions of children and seniors.
5. I went to summer camp with your son last year.
4. I'm your old friend. We went to high school together.
Someone you know is in need.
3. I work at the gas station. I pump your gas.
2. I'm your neighbor. Our kids are classmates.
Who's the 1 in 8 in your life that needs help?
1. We live next door to each other.
You can make a difference through Feeding America and its nationwide network of more than 200 food banks. Take action at feedingamerica.org/1in8. A public service announcement brought to you by Feeding America and the Ad Council.
Imagine being a child and changing schools every 30 days. The places and faces would always be new. It would be hard to make friends. Hi, my name is Greg Sweeney. When I was 12, I started a Cub Scout pack just for homeless boys. I wanted them to have a small slice of the childhood most kids take for granted. In just 6 years, Pack 506 has taught scouting to more than 100 homeless boys. Along the way, something even more important happened. The weekly Cub Scout meetings have become a place where friendships are built. I had one idea. It changed 100 lives. Put your good idea into action. Get out and live. Volunteer.
Brought to you by the Hitachi Foundation's Yoshiyama Award for Exemplary Service to the Community and this station.
News Talk 1180 WFYL. Streaming live at 1180WFYL.com.
As the song says, how quick are you going to get up? So if you have been knocked down, your credit's been knocked down for some reason, don't let that prevent you from improving it. We have in studio today Carl Scaramuzza from Credit Blueprint, and Carl's an expert in rebuilding your credit and helping get your credit scores up so that it will help you not only in real estate, but what are some of the other areas that people look at where they're going to check your credit and check your credit score?
Insurance premiums. That's a big one. There's some of the larger insurance carriers out there. That's one of the 5 things they look at is your credit score. So you really get penalized on your auto insurance and homeowners and things like that.
And that's interesting because their actuaries are saying a predictor on whether you're going to have a claim or not is what your credit looks like. And most people wouldn't, in the old days, certainly wouldn't put that together, but that does exist. That's our world right now. So right or wrong, that's what we got to deal with. Unfortunately, Carl and I don't make the rules, but we got to help you navigate the rules to your best advantage and help you leverage yourself such that you can get the best deals out there. And we certainly want to help you that way in the area of real estate. But realize that as we're talking credit here, it affects not only your real estate or mortgage purchase, your insurance, and also employers look at your credit these days.
Absolutely, yeah. Especially people in the mortgage industry like yourself. There's a lot of guys in the mortgage industry, guys and girls in the mortgage industry right now that are being penalized because they don't have good credit. Got to have good credit if you want to work in the mortgage industry right now.
And actually, any financial realm, I think these days, any financial employer is going to pull credit, especially if you're involved in the dealing with the public type aspect. Because think about it, if somebody has bad credit or they're under financial pressure, they are much more likely, statistically, to try and bend a rule or get something done because they really need the money. And versus someone else who might adhere to the rules more and maybe lose a client or lose a customer because of credit, for example, or some other aspect because they're not under that financial pressure. And look at people that get foreclosed on. Financial pressure causes so many problems in a life. It's one of the biggest pressures that there are. And think about what people do and the crazy things people do when, for example, they're under the threat of losing their home. They don't think clearly and certainly make mistakes. And we want to try to help prevent that for you. And look at how houses are left when it gets foreclosed on. There's certainly not just normal wear and tear, but you see some really bizarre things when you go into some of these foreclosure homes where people really are taking their aggression out against the house. You see walls kicked in and various damages that aren't just part of neglect and wear and tear. So we want to prevent you from getting into that situation And Carl, you said an interesting thing. I've heard you say it before. It's making that decision and making that commitment to make the change. A lot of you probably listen and think, my credit's so far gone, I can't do anything, or I'll take care of this as time goes on, and over the coming 6 months, let's say, I know I'll improve my credit. But it's really hard to do on your own. You and I have worked with so many people that it just doesn't happen if you try to do it on your own. And that's where someone like Carl comes in and kind of guides you and can kick you in the pants a little bit in some cases, and help you get on your way, where if you do it on your own, it's not going to happen.
Very, very difficult. And you can accomplish a couple things on your own. There's no doubt about that. But good credit to me is really confidence. Really instills confidence when you're walking in dealing with a salesman at a car dealership, or when you're dealing with a seller when you're trying to purchase a property, or same thing with an employer. To me, it just instills a confidence for you to be able to accomplish what you want to accomplish with your life. And even owning a business. If you own a business nowadays, and during the break we touched on this a little bit, bringing back the bank statement program. But owning a business nowadays, credit score is so important. If you want to establish your business credit, you need to have a 680 personal credit score to establish any kind of business credit. So I don't know how, if you're a business owner today, you don't have good personal credit. It's an absolute must.
Well, you have business owners that had good personal credit, and I'm going to give you an example of how things have maybe loosened up a little bit for you self-employed people out there. You have a lot of business owners that have had businesses for 10 years, let's say, and during the economic slump of maybe 3 years ago or even 2 years ago, their income went down. Maybe their credit got dinged up. But now for the past 12 months or 18 months, they've been on an upswing and their business is kind of back to where it was before. And they come to us and they want to refinance. Well, during the real estate debacle that started maybe in 06 or so, the government knee-jerk reaction, the pendulum swung way the other way, and they tightened things up and made the regulations such that it made it very prohibitive for someone who wanted to borrow money. And we are seeing just recently maybe the pendulum swinging back the other way, but I think in a good way, because they're being a little bit more realistic in certain aspects. And I'll just give you an idea. You have the business owner, been in business 10 years, got his credit dinged up 3 years ago or 2 years ago, or his income dinged up. Maybe his credit was good all along. And in the past, we were having to take into account and average in those prior bad years of income with his now current good income, and it would make people not qualify, even if they just wanted to refinance to lower their payment. Well, one thing that's changed recently is we get underwriting approvals now where we really only have to look at their 2010 tax return, for example, or maybe 2010 and year-to-date for 2011 to qualify someone to be able to refinance.
But that comes along with having good credit scores, right? So if
Still
you're
need
going to
the
look
good credit, yep.
1 year of a tax return, you better have pretty sterling credit, right?
Although we're only maybe looking at 1 year of tax return, we're still looking at all of the credit that's on your credit report, which on a credit report, how far does credit go back?
7 years. Okay. So items can remain on a credit report for 7 years, and then according to the Fair Credit Reporting Act, that item should be removed off of the report.
So now in the score, I think and correct me if I'm wrong, the score is being calculated more heavily on your last 12 months and last 24 months of payment history. Correct?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. I just sent out a recent email kind of explaining on some of the collection accounts when you talk about the length of history that something's actually been on your report. The older the account, the less of an impact it actually has on your credit scores. So, for example, I had almost wasn't a client, but ended up turning into a client that was referred over to me from a mortgage banker referral. And I had about a 10-minute consultation with the client, and he had probably about 15 derogatory accounts on the report, collections and charge-offs, and they were all over 2 years old. This was all from a circumstance that happened back in his life a couple years ago. Well, he took it upon himself to say, you know what? I'm just going to pay off everything on my credit report. I can do this on my own. Big mistake. He went and did that on his own, okay, and ended up becoming a client of mine because his scores didn't move 60 days later. He actually pulled his credit up in 30 days, and they were lower, and then he pulled the credit back up in 60 days, and they were back to where they were, the same score. So he ended up paying, I think, about $4,000 out of his pocket, okay, and the scores were exactly the same. So that kind of points to anything that's over 2 years old. It's actually, you're better off trying to get that account removed off of the report than you are actually handing money over to that company. Because what will happen at that point is a 24-month-old collection account, let's just use a utility, for example, or Verizon or Comcast or medical collections that, oh gosh, always seem to show up on your credit report, right?
Common.
I mean, how many medical collections do you see?
Very common.
Everybody has an average of 2 or 3 medical collections that show up on a credit report. But, accounts like that, that are over 2 years old, if you get it removed as opposed to actually making a payment to that medical collector, and what will happen, let's assume that you do the opposite of the advice, which is I'm just going to pay everything off like my client did. That account will go from a couple pages back on your credit report to where it hasn't really been active in the past 24 months to the first page of your credit report, and now it'll show paid collection. You think that would actually help, but it doesn't. You're actually bringing an old account that hasn't had really much of an impact on your scores, and you're bringing it to the first page of your credit report now. Now, the flip side to that is new collection accounts you want to pay attention to. Those are accounts that you actually, when you get something like that in the mail, a utility or a medical collection or a parking violation, whatever it might be. I see a lot of Philadelphia parking violations show up on credit reports. That's something that you actually want to pay off. So the newer it is, you actually kind of want to take that one on the chin and make the payment to the collector. The older it is, outside of 24 months, you kind of want to leave that untouched.
And what you're talking about is really counterintuitive, because when you get the goal of maybe wanting to buy a house, and so now you're motivated to take care of your credit, and we pull credit and share with someone what their credit report looks like, and they see these medical collections or these cell phone collections or whatever the case may be, the immediate impulse from people is, oh, I'll just pay it off. And you're right. That's not necessarily a good thing to do, and that's why you need someone like Carl to kind of guide you through this, because you can make some expensive mistakes, and we want you to save as much money as you can so that you can use that, for example, towards the real estate purchase instead of necessarily towards improving your score or paying these collectors off, because in many cases that's not the best thing for you to do. And this is really hard for someone who doesn't deal with credit every day to be able to figure out and be able to do on their own. And that's why you need someone like Carl to be able to help you with that, and not only to help you with it and do it the cheapest and easiest way, but also maybe to shorten up the time it might take you to get your credit in shape. You know, somebody maybe on their own might be able to do it and might take 1 or 2 years, where maybe if they had your help, you can speed that up and do it in a much lesser time.
And I appreciate you saying that, Doug, and that's one of the reasons that we have a good relationship is what I call them are, not to badmouth anybody, but cowboy originators. There's some loan originators out there that don't want to work with people that have bad credit, and all they want to help are people that have perfect credit and W-2 salary, W-2, have the income that's necessary. And there's people like you out there, Doug, that actually like to work with families like that, that actually encourage people to come out that otherwise might call a larger bank and say, and be on the phone for 5 minutes, and somebody's shooing them off the phone saying, I can't help you. And one of the things that Doug will say is, I can help you.
And it does personally gives me a lot of satisfaction too, because when you help someone that really needs help, and they're generally much more grateful, and you really are seeing a difference in their lives. I remember one year we helped someone who never thought they'd be able to buy a house, and he sent me a Christmas card, and it was a picture of his whole family, and they were just thanking me for helping them get into this house where before he thought he'd never be able to own a home. And there's some satisfaction that comes in that as well, and that's maybe a little of the selfish end on my part. But we do want to help you out there. If you have any issue that we've touched on that you think you might want to check on, you can always reach us here at 888-599-4949. That's our real estate hotline. It's a 24-hour number. You can certainly leave a message there, and within 24 hours, either myself personally or, for example, if it's a credit issue, Carl, we will get back to you and try and help you along your way, or maybe even just get your question answered. You can always call us here, too. We have a little bit of time left on the show if anybody wants to call in. That number would be 610-539-TALK. Again, it's 610-539-TALK, and you can call us and we'll answer your question right now. But remember, there is help for you, and the only way you're going to solve your issue is by addressing it. And if I can create a little bit of urgency for you, the urgency would be that if you are interested in getting yourself in shape to purchase real estate, there is no better time than right now. One of the financial newsletters that I read it's an online newsletter, and it's called Daily Wealth. It's written by a PhD economist. His name is Dr. Steve Sugarud. And kind of the gist of what he's been writing about recently is what a great time, and really the best time in his lifetime, which is what I've been saying as well, that it is to purchase real estate. In short, buying right now, combined with a little inflation and a little leverage, which you get with real estate, you can build a nest egg which can help you also in your retirement. Real estate is not necessarily buying and selling over a very short period of time. It's a longer term investment. Look at people that maybe your parents or people in your neighborhood that have been there a long time and ask them, what did you pay for your property? And maybe they paid $150,000 and now that property is worth $300,000. Maybe when they borrowed, they only put 3.5% down, and maybe they owed $145,000 initially. But now, over the last 10 years or 20 years or however long they've been there, they've paid that loan down. Maybe they owe $75,000. So now they're controlling an asset, maybe worth $300,000, and they only owe $75,000 on it. What does that do for your retirement when you go to sell that house and downsize and look at all that cash that you could get upon and realize upon the sale of that real estate? So real estate is a good long-term wealth builder. We're not talking investors now who have a lot of different techniques. We're talking about regular old homeowners. For most people, and talk to your parents, for most people on the long term, real estate has been their single best investment over their lifetime. It's something that you can control and that you can do and improve over time. And we'll certainly discuss some of that when we come back. We're going to take a quick break. When you come back, we're here with Carl Scaramuzza from Credit Blueprint. We'll discuss more about your credit and more about what you can do to access this real estate opportunity that exists today. So come on back.
Everybody gets knocked down. Everybody gets knocked down. How quick are you gonna get up? Just how are you gonna get up? Like Cali in the jungle, like Nelson in jail, like Simpson on the mountain. With odds like that, they were bound to fail. Like Keller in the darkness, like Adams in the dark.
From Willow Grove to Westchester, Pottstown to Philadelphia, it's News Talk 1180 WFYL.
If my picker doesn't take care of my tires during a race, I have a bad day at the track. This is Brad Keselowski, driver of NASCAR's number 22 Discount Tire Car. If you don't maintain the right tire pressure on your family car, you're going to waste money and put yourself and your family at risk. Underinflated tires are dangerous, so be tire smart and check your tire pressure every month. You'll save money at the pump and help your tires last longer.
A message from the Rubber Manufacturers Association.
More than 100 million animals are illegally killed each year. Poaching is a major threat to our country's wildlife, but it's just one of the risks animals face. Pervasive and unprecedented destruction of their habitat threatens their very existence as development encroaches on our nation's remaining open spaces. The best way to protect wildlife is to protect the land on which they live. When we make their land safe and protect it from development, we help keep animals from extinction and defend fragile ecosystems. The Humane Society Wildlife Land Trust works with private landowners to protect wildlife by preserving natural habitats and establishing permanent sanctuaries. Curbing habitat loss is a daunting task, but one that must be undertaken to ensure that wildlife have the wild places they need to survive and thrive in perpetuity. To learn more, call 1-800-729-SAVE, that's 1-800-729-SAVE, or visit wildlifelandtrust.org.
Hi, this is Brad Keselowski, driver of NASCAR's number 22 discount tire car. At the track, I have an entire pit crew to ensure my tires are properly maintained. But at home, I do it myself, and it only costs a penny. Here's how to check tires for proper tread. Take a penny, place in the tire tread head first, and if you see all of Lincoln's head, it's time to replace that tire. So be tire smart. Take a few minutes every month to properly maintain your tires.
A message from the Rubber Manufacturers Association. News Talk 1180 WFYL. Streaming live at 1180WFYL.com.
Everybody gets knocked down. How quick are you going to get up and keep that dial on 1180 WFYL? I'm your host, Doug Andraka, here on Real Estate Radio, and we're in studio live with you today with Carl Scaramuzza from Credit Blueprint, discussing your real estate life. And Carl, we were talking a little bit about why real estate is such a good opportunity, and it really comes down to affordability. It comes down to the fact that we have extremely low interest rates, historically low interest rates right now, and we have home prices which have done something that they haven't done in a long time, and that they've had a big decline. So when you combine lower sale prices with the low borrowing costs of a mortgage, you have super affordability. And you and I have both seen people that have renters, for example, that have purchased homes and end up paying less in the mortgage payment than what they were paying in rent. We talk about first-time home buyers being such a big part of the marketplace, but the second biggest group, as a group, that's buying in real estate these days is the smart money in real estate, and those are investors. And there's a reason investors are investing in real estate, and that's because it's such a good opportunity these days.
Yeah, there's been some polls out there that the 1% that we call the super rich, obviously they're investing in gold and silver. But the third thing on that list right behind that is real estate. So
it's true.
Some of those investors are putting their money back in real estate, buying up a lot of real estate in certain areas. So good trend to follow.
It is. And some of the best investors that I know, one is Dr. Steve Sugarud, who we mentioned earlier. But most of the others that I've read is they're going around and they are purchasing real estate. Many of them are purchasing investment type real estate, which is rental property. And one reason why rents are increasing is because of supply and demand. There's so many people that either have a foreclosure and can no longer qualify to buy a house, at least for the time being, or their credit is ruined, or for whatever reason they can't be a buyer right now. They have to live somewhere, so they're going to rent. So the pool of renters has greatly increased. There's not a lot of new rental properties being built, so landlords are being able to increase your rent. And if your rent's going to go up every year, why do you want to be a renter when you can own a home, fix in your interest rate at a super low rate for 30 years? 30 years at interest rates have been in the 3s, they're in the 4s, at super low rates, and lock that payment in. It can never increase. The mortgage part of your payment could never increase over 30 years. What do you think is going to happen down the road? Do you think that that inflation is going to kick up at some point? I will tell you this, that as much money as the Fed is putting into the economy in the history of our country, every single time that has happened, inflation is the result down the road. We're having inflation right now. Now, granted, the government says it's in the 2.2% range. Personally, I think it's higher than that. Look at the food prices you're paying in the supermarket today versus where you were a year ago. You hear your grandparents talk about paying 5 cents for a loaf of bread. What do you pay now for a loaf of bread? So inflation is happening. It's just not happening in real estate right now, but it will again, and it will happen in real estate again. Real estate has generally been a haven for you to overcome inflation, because historically real estate appreciates over time. And this decrease in real estate won't happen forever. So if you want to protect yourself against inflation and maybe build a nice nest egg for you that you can control, that you can improve, You can do things like our producer, Matt, here mentioned his parents adding a deck. That adds value to your property, improving the kitchens, the bathrooms, adding square footage, taking care of the outside. These are all things that you help improve your investment. Try doing that with a stock. Buy stock in XYZ company, Microsoft or GE or something like that. What can you do to improve that stock? You think if you go out and buy a laptop and it has Windows on it, that you're going to improve the price of your Microsoft stock? I don't think so. But there's things that you can absolutely do to your home to improve your investment. So that's why we here at Real Estate Radio think that now is a unique time in real estate, and it's really a good time to really be thinking about purchasing a piece of real estate.
And rent's going to continue to rise as well. I mentioned at the beginning of the show that it's up 2% in the last 12 months. That's also a factor of, when you're comparing the difference between renting now versus becoming a homeowner and how it's actually more advantageous to own a home. You could potentially have a lot lower payment right now. So rent will continue to rise. It's supply and demand, right?
Mm-hmm. It absolutely is. And the only thing, realize the piece of your mortgage payment for most people is their mortgage, and then their real estate taxes, and then their homeowner's insurance. Now, we can't control what's going to happen with your real estate taxes, and we can't control what's going to happen with your insurance premium. But by fixing in your mortgage payment at a low interest rate like it is now, and fixing it for 30 years, that part of your payment will never change as long as you're in that home or until you refinance. Your taxes can change over time, and that could affect your cost of ownership, and your insurance can change over time, but certainly not at the pace of what's happening with landlords and that with rent right now, because the landlord has to increase your rent if his payment is increasing.
Absolutely. And that's, I would challenge consumers out there that are listening to this show right now, and I'll throw a number out there, $1,500. If you're renting for $1,500 a month, probably a good idea to look at purchasing a property. And I know it's difficult right now, right? The holidays are coming up. You got Thanksgiving, you got Christmas, and everybody's kind of tightening up right now. But a good goal for 2012, and I talk to my clients about this all the time, make a real goal to become a homeowner in 2012. Actually set some money aside starting in January when you get your refund. It's a great time to put some money aside for a down payment to actually become a homeowner, not in 2 years from now.
And to add some more urgency to that, as we get into this holiday season, and we're here in mid-October, certainly turning out to be a nice day outside, although a little chilly this morning, right, Matt? Our producer, Matt, who does a great job for us here on Real Estate Radio, we were talking about how the heat was actually on maybe for the first time in a while since I've come in here. But as we get into this holiday season, people tend to not think about real estate. Now, how does that help you as a potential buyer? It helps you because sellers are out there thinking, wow, I've had my house on the market now all summer and into the fall, and I haven't sold it. And now we're coming up to the holidays. I'm going to have less people looking than ever at my house, and then he might be more willing to deal with you as a buyer and discount the price of his house or come to some terms that are available to you, maybe for him paying your closing costs or helping you in some other way. So you're going to get sellers as we get further on into the year that are going to get more and more anxious to sell. And as a buyer, that's just going to help you on the buy side to make a better deal. So get yourself in shape. Do the things you need to do to get your ducks in a row and get yourself ready to buy, one of which is, first of all, let's check your credit and give us a call. We can certainly do that. There's no charge to do that. And if there is an issue that you need help with, we can turn you over to Carl, who can certainly get your credit portion of your application in line.
But back to what you had mentioned earlier, December being a good time to purchase property. Some of the realtors that I deal with on a monthly basis have told me about some amazing deals that have happened towards the end of the year. So great time if you're thinking about buying. December is a great time, closing the year out around Christmas time, to actually get, a good deal on a house.
You get a good deal, and you get the tax deduction. One of the main advantages of being a homeowner, at least now with the way the tax code is right now, is you get to deduct portions of your closing costs. Certain things that you pay at closing are tax deductible. Now, even if you close by December 31st, you get to deduct that entire portion on your 2011 tax return. If you close January 1st, you got to wait until you file in January of 2013 to collect that tax deduction. So there's a tax motivation if it fits for your guideline. And everybody, we're not trying to rush anyone, but if you're thinking about it, there's certainly plenty of time if you're starting now to purchase and close by the end of the year and realize that tax deduction. Some of the things you can deduct are any points that you pay are fully deductible. Now think about this. Here's one of the double whammies that most people don't know is, let's say we help you negotiate this deal and we help the seller pay for your closing costs. And to get your payment as low as possible, we have you pay points, which is money that you pay the mortgage company up front to reduce your interest rate. And let's say that saves you $50 or $100 per month. And we have the seller pay for your points. Even though the seller is paying for your points, guess who gets to deduct it on their tax return? You, the buyer, get to deduct it, even though you didn't even pay for it up front. So the seller's paying for it, and Uncle Sam says, we'll let you deduct it on your taxes, and you get a double benefit that way. So that's a big bonus for you. There's a lot of things that you can do around real estate that right now the government has given tax favorable status to. It's not the purpose of our show to give an opinion on whether that's good or bad, but we are here to tell you that you can take advantage of that, and we want to help you with that. And it can get complicated, so you do want experts and people that you can trust to help you with that. And we hope through the show we're helping build that trust with you. Carl and I work together on a lot of transactions. Carl on the credit side, me on the mortgage side, to help people reach their goal of home ownership. And we talked a little bit about it before the show, but it's not strictly a financial thing. Obviously, there's a lot of pride that goes along with home ownership. And it improves neighborhoods one by one. So you've probably seen that happen in your career.
Absolutely. And you were just touching on the FICO scores, the credit scores of 680. And we talked about this during the break. The better your score is, the lower your closing costs are going to be, right? Mm-hmm. So at Credit Blueprint, we don't just work with clients that have unusable credit, anything below a 620 credit score. We actually help clients out that have a 675 credit score that maybe they've applied for a refinance and they need to get a 720 score to avoid paying a couple points, right? So we work with those types of clients as well.
Awesome. There's so many things we didn't get to this show, but we will do so in future shows. I wanted to go over a history of interest rates and show you what can happen in the future, because we do learn from the past. So stay with us every Saturday here on 1180 WFYL between 9 and 10 for Real Estate Radio. We'll talk interest rates. We'll talk refinancing opportunities. We'll talk about renting. We'll talk about buying. Certainly, Carl, thank you today for coming in and enlightening us as far as credit goes.
I appreciate the opportunity, and I apologize to any cowboy originators that I might have offended.
And there are certainly some out there. But don't let credit stop you from taking the steps you need to achieve the American dream. Give us a call, and we'll join us next week on Saturday between 9 and 10. Thank you.
Everybody gets knocked down. How quick are you gonna get up? Just how are you gonna get up like Cali in the jungle?